Welcome to the Blended Family Podcast. My name is Claire Karatu.
I love it so much. I don't think you guys even know it.
Before I start on what it is that we'll be discussing today, I'd like to introduce my beautiful, beautiful, beautiful guests. Please go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Beautiful.
Times three.
Okay. Go on,
I think
Mama.
I'm gorgeous.
Yes, ma'am.
My name's Mrs. Anna Fukes Birch, and in other names I'm known as Mama Lydia KM,
Yes.
the one who is sat next to me.
Right.
And Agi, Nonsizi,
Yes.
Joroge. Yeah, she lives in the UK. That's where she is at the moment.
Okay.
And that's where I live as well. I'm here to visit my mom and dad.
Yeah.
And Claire decided to hijack me.
Complete hijack.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, she did hijack me. But I'm so happy to be on set today.
Right.
And I can't wait.
Oh, thank you for coming, Lydia. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Lydia KM. I am a wellness content creator and entrepreneur and also a podcaster. And I'm really happy to have this conversation. This is my mama.
Yes.
Her Instagram is Kesinjoro. That's what she's really known for.
Yeah.
That's her real name. Kesinjoro is what she's known for.
Right.
But yeah, I'm happy to be here with my mom and to have this conversation with you, Claire. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for coming. Honestly, let me tell you just how much of a wellness content creator Lydia is. The moment she saw the topic for the discussion we're having today, she's like, I'm in. Say less. Let me just talk to my mom first, and then I'll let you know if she's game, and we're coming.
Yeah.
And thank you for being here.
Yeah,
Honestly,
for
the both
sure.
of you. I saw your mom on the stories, or rather I saw your mom on your stories, and I was just like, this is perfect. Like
Yeah,
I have
it
to have
aligns.
both of you in there, because it just works so wonderfully well. Now, we did talk about, I guess, some of the misconceptions that are in blended, that are taken or considered in blended families. And we did explain to you what a blended family is. So what we're going to do is we're sort of going to go down the road of when you realize that this is done. So before you get into a blended family, we're going to take it all the way back until your first realization of this is done. I'm going to be a separate mom. What am I going to do? Am I ever going to find anybody? Am I ever going to be loved or love again because of the heartbreak that I've gone through? Are my children going to be okay? Just some of the things that we go through and we think about when we go through divorce. And who better, okay, to have discussed this than Lydia as the child who went through this. And I know you have spoken about it on your podcast. On your platform as well.
Yeah.
And of course, mom, who's talked about it as well on her platform. So the first thing I'm going to ask, and I will share my experience as well, is when you get to that point of realizing that this is done, I can't do this anymore. I have to change my life for me now. When did you realize that?
I think this is very interesting because looking back, I don't think I could see something coming.
Right.
And that is the difference. Because someone could be in a relationship and they can see, they can sense, they can smell a rat. Something is coming here. But with my case, it was just one night. That's it.
Yeah.
And it happened. So talking about how am I going to cope or who am I going to be after this,
Right.
there was no time for that. And that is a fact.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that. The first thing I thought about is how am I going to be safe?
Okay.
It's not about how am I going to cope if I leave this home? How are my children going to be? How am I even going to feed myself? Because it was just like, that like crash. That's it. And I'm sure there's some people whose marriages happen like that.
Yeah.
Others is like they observe, they wait, they give chances after chances.
Yeah.
And then they get fed up and they move.
Oh my
that
gosh.
way, that's different. Because you probably had planned,
Right.
you probably had saved, you had done so much because you knew the end is coming. With me, it was one night and that was done.
Yeah.
So I had no room to plan what is happening.
Yeah.
The good thing is I knew I'm going to head to my parents.
Yes.
That's all I knew.
Okay.
I had not planned nothing or even imagined my life alone.
Yeah.
It just happened. Crash.
That's so interesting because I've never actually heard someone be open about it happening once and that's it. Because I fall in the line of people who try again, go, leave, try again, get guilty. Oh my gosh, for the children, I need to try this again. So go back, try again, until you get to the point of being done, of being done. So was it the pain of that one instant, of that one moment, that then your mind just said, no, this is it?
Disclaimer.
Yeah.
That does not mean that I had not gone back
Okay.
home. No, there were some circumstances that had made me go back home to my parents.
Right.
And of course, that happens. You're not happy. You can't actually solve the problem or even sit down and talk about it.
Yeah.
So you move away from the problem, then come back later. By the time I was going away, I was not going forever. I was just going to cool down, then come back. That one happened.
Okay.
But this particular night, that one, how it happened, there was no turning back.
Okay.
There was no turning back. There was a lot of threats. There was a lot of scary moments.
Yeah.
And that was it. So I just made up my mind. I can't live like this.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
just had to go.
I love that fact that you said made up your mind, because it's a choice that we are the ones who make. I don't know, Lydia, I'm going to ask you something. Can you remember it? Because I know you were also a bit young. Yeah. But can you remember just some of the events that played out during this period?
So we were actually on school holidays and we were at my mom's mom, right? Well, I was actually, because my sister wasn't feeling well. So she was home with mom and dad, but I was at my mom's mom, like it was like school holidays. All I remember is my mom coming home with all her stuff.
Right.
It's like you just know something isn't right, but you're not exactly sure what is happening. But I remember that very, very specifically. Even in my body, I can feel it. And I think you told us we're not going to be living with dad anymore. Is that what you told us? Do you remember
I
what you
think I
told us?
said something in those lines. I can't remember.
It was
precise
something along
words.
those lines. And it was, I don't think she could explain so much. And also it's like, it just happened. And now that I know what had happened, it's like, I'm sure she couldn't have had any explanation.
Right.
It was just newness all of a sudden. And it was just like, your world is different. That's the end. No conversation. So I can remember what that felt like. And to be honest, I feel like that's why I'm really obsessed with people I have a really strong sense of kind of autonomy over my life. I like to feel like I'm controlling my life.
Right.
And I think there's a bit of that comes from that feeling of like, you're not in control. Everything is a complete, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah,
No.
just go ahead.
Not in my set.
Mama said no. Mama said no. I'm going to go with mama
Not
on
in
that.
my set.
So it was a complete crap show.
Right.
But you didn't know what was going on, and it's like you just couldn't change it. So I remember the feelings, but not so much about the events, really.
Okay. How were you feeling about telling Lydia? Because I think in that moment when I try and remember leaving, I wanted my kids to feel safe. And so I also took them to my mom's house. How I wanted my kids to feel in that moment. And it was, I just wanted them to be safe. Because of how upset and how done I was trying to figure out what's the next move. And in that moment, protecting them was the only thing that I could do, rather than, telling them, this has happened, I'm upset with you, we're leaving, How was it for you in terms of how it is you felt in that moment, apart from the crash when it came to Lydia and Aki?
I think I thought about myself first.
Yeah. Okay.
Because if anything, I would have been the one in danger. They wouldn't have been. So I didn't really worry about how they felt.
Okay.
It was about keeping myself safe.
Right.
Yes, and looking back, I would still have done the same.
The same exact thing.
Yeah, just removing myself from that dangerous or potentially dangerous situation.
Yeah.
That is it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know we're going to have this discussion with a lawyer who's going to come in. And some of the things that he likes to ask his client is, how did we get to this point? How did we get to the point where we're facing each other and we're deeply in love, to the point of we're going to bash each other's heads on the wall? How did we get to that point?
I wouldn't know how to answer that one. However, I know in my case, alcohol was a contributory factor.
Okay.
And if it's one person who is drinking, finding the other one home sober, so you are the one who is kind of on receiving end.
Right.
Yes. And I remember one time I could see a thread When he's not drunk, we are very okay. But when he drinks, something is not right.
Yeah.
And I remember one time kind of calling him out in the morning, and I say, do you know what? There is a way you are treating me, and there are some words you are telling me when you are drunk.
Right.
And in the morning, you always say you don't remember. And I said, I can't carry on like this.
Right.
There are two ways. Either you stop drinking,
Yeah.
or this marriage is over. When I was saying that, I didn't think the end would come. You know, it's just that way of talking to someone,
Right.
kind of to awaken them. But then, of course, they'll think that is the same way you talk, that's the same way you talk. But I still remember that warning. I said, I just can't carry on like this because you are threatening me. I feel like I'm living in danger every now and then. So what can we do about this? So you either stop drinking, because it seems like you are saying things and the following day you have forgotten. I don't know whether that was true or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how can I live with that? You know?
Right.
Yes. So I remember saying, you either stop drinking or this marriage is just gonna end.
I guess to just stop onto that, there's a lot of things that different people go through in different relationships, right? But for me, what I can remember so clearly is I even remember the place that I was standing. I remember the sermon that I had listened to, because I had prayed quite a lot, you know, telling God, like, honestly, God, if this is for me, then let it be for me. If it's not, just take it away, because I was also quite done living a certain type of way.
Yeah.
And so where I was going with this is there's a awakening that I think you sort of have in that moment, that even because a lot of people ask, like, did you ever consider maybe you made a mistake? Maybe you should have tried to make it work. Maybe if the other party was willing enough, because you should give it time. There's a lady who I met and said, no, you're supposed to stick it out. And I'm like, honey, you don't even know half of the things that I went through, you know, to tell me that you're supposed to stick it out. So during this period of realization and knowing that this is done and you're done and you're walking away, what are some of the coping strategies that you used when it came to now dealing with not just your emotions, but your kids' emotions? Because I struggled a lot trying to be present for my children because of the pain that I was trying to deal with, you know, the anger that I was trying to deal with, trying to figure out what next? What am I going to do? How am I going to support these children? How am I going to be able to move out of mom's house and be able, because I have 2 children, and be able to just take care of these kids? So, what coping strategies did you use in that time?
Do you know, looking back, I don't even know how I went through that.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
Yeah.
It's that taking each day at a time, because especially those times, that era, so many women were looking at me like, you left your husband.
Oh, yeah. It was a different time.
That is the thing.
Yeah.
It's like no one even wants to listen to what reason made you leave. It is like you left him. And everyone seems to be pointing a finger at you. Because in the Bible, it's written, a foolish woman kind of destroys her own home with her own hands.
Right.
There is something like that. I don't know whether it's in Psalms or Proverbs or something like that. So most women will come with that. It's like an attack. No one wants to listen why you left, because most of them, I realized, were going through the same.
Yeah.
But because I was brave enough to leave, then, like Lydia said in another podcast, Lynn's podcast.
Right.
Yes, when you are comfortable, when you are in your comfort zone or something like that. Yes, you hate it when someone else comes out.
Yeah.
So many people were even going through more than I was going through. But the moment you leave, they're like, why would you leave? Because they know what they're going through, but they're still stuck there.
Yeah.
So I don't even know how I went through this, because sharing with people was almost out.
Right.
Because I was judged straight away. And I didn't want to feel judged. So I had my family.
Yes.
And to be honest with you, may the Lord bless those people. My mom, my dad, my brothers and sister.
Yes.
Those are the reason I stood. Because they know me as a person.
Right.
So they know there must be a problem for this lady to come back home.
Yeah.
They know I can withstand stuff. They know how I behave. They know I'm respectable. I know there are problems in marriages.
Yes.
Probably what my dad cannot see or what my mom cannot see. But they know me as a person. So they stood with me, they fought for me, they made me feel comfortable. And there is no single time I felt like, what am I even doing here? I would rather be the other side. Never. Not at any point. So that one, they're the ones, that network, oh my God, they stood with me so well. I remember one time my mom said, after about 3 months, I remember what one of my brothers said, wow, it's 3 months now. I thought, oh, you are counting.
Yeah,
And
who's
then,
counting?
Yeah, and then my mom said, do you know what? If you ever want to go back to that home, I bless you. If you never want to go back home, I bless you. And she said, I know you are the one who is experiencing all those things that you're telling us.
Yeah.
Nobody else. So if you decide to go back, go, and I'll bless you. If you don't want to go, stay.
Right.
And that way, you feel like you have a choice to make. You don't feel pushed, rushed, or judged, you know? And I think that is how I went through that.
Yeah. Lydia, I'm going to come to you in just a bit, but you've just reminded me of every time that I'd go back home, Mom would ask me, are you sure? You know, because either way, I will support you, but are you sure? I need you to be sure, because what tends to happen is also for your family, they also need to be on board with the decision that you made, because sometimes, let's say, there would be a conversation that she would have with the other side of the family, and she would try and communicate that this is not happening anymore. You know, we're still friends, but my daughter has decided that she's going a separate way. And then I go back. So, and then I go back. You know what I mean? So now it leaves them in a point where it's like, you're not making this easy for us. You're not making this easy for us. You need to be sure. But Lydia, thank you for listening to your mom so comfortably.
No,
and
she's amazing.
She really is. She really is. I'd really like to know what your coping mechanisms were, because there are those kids. I haven't had a conversation in a level with my kids where they've sort of like been able to express themselves fully. That's basically because of the limits of their age.
Yeah.
But I will still continue to have these conversations with them. But for you now, sitting here as Lydia, when you look back, it's like, what do you think you used, apart from Aggie, because I know sisters, you know, what were some of your coping mechanisms during this period?
You guys separated when? 1999? What? 2000?
1999.
1999. Yeah. So first
April
of all,
22nd.
Oh wow. Okay. All
righty. 22,
So
46.
So back then, we were aliens because no one's parents were separated. That was just either you didn't ever know your dad ever.
Right.
That was the scenario, or your parents were together. There was no this in between.
Yeah.
So it was a very alienating experience for sure. And I don't think mom had this set skill or anyone else around us had the set skill to be able to guide us through what we were going through. Emotionally, it was, now looking back, I don't even know how we dealt with that because it's overwhelming in a way that you can't explain, and you're a child, so you don't have the emotional language, you don't know how to articulate what you're feeling, but you know the world is like kind of crashing under you. Then I think just soon after, 2000 is when you left, right? Yeah. Then 2000, mom left for the UK. Right?
Oh, yes.
Then now we were living with dad. Girl. Like, need I say more? It was just a compilation of a lot of trauma. And I did a bit of rebelling, especially after mom left. It's like I just kind of stopped caring about things. I could see I was just angry, and there was a lot that was going on inside my body and in my emotions, and I didn't know what to do with them. Aggie went the other route because she kind of was more repressing things. Like she kind of went inward, whereas me, I tried to kind of express this frustration and everything like that outward. So there were no coping mechanism. There was nothing.
Yeah, at that time. I feel like now it's a lot different because
for sure.
The courts are giving 50-50 to fathers now as well. Yeah. And so the discussion of custody is becoming more and more, I guess, discussed and navigated. So in those days, and I can't understand why you'd say it's not really a way that you can be able to describe what coping looked like in that time. But then like now, I guess I'm speaking from what I've had to go through, is fathers want to be present in their children's lives. Fathers are out there to take their kids away from their mothers. Fathers are out there nowadays making an effort to try as much as possible to be involved completely in their child's lives, despite the distance. So then in that case, I guess what I'd like to learn and to understand, especially because of also our viewers, I know they're probably going through the same thing right now, is what are some of the ways that we can be able to navigate coping in that space, if you're able to talk on it?
If I could go back now, what as a child I needed was my parents to have the tools to deal with their own emotions. Because I do understand that, like, first of all, when you were just talking right now about you going through the separation and you had kids, I've dealt with breakups. And I didn't have children. And that could easily, that's enough. That's enough to take you, I'm telling you. So to imagine with kids, it's not, now when I look back, I don't think it was more than I needed my parents to just kind of be figuring me out. I would have loved for them to have help to figure themselves out. Like, what are you going through? Are you in therapy? You know, to have guidance about their own emotions. And then because of that, they would have been able to support us a bit better, and maybe even also give us those resources like child therapists and things like that, to be able to help us understand what we are feeling, what we are going through, and to help us navigate through the experience without having so much trauma from it, you know? I would also, I guess then I wish I had, I don't know, more people who, I mean, I don't wish more people's parents were divorced, but just to feel like you're not an alien. Like, you know, there was that sense of like familiarity with other people who had other experiences. But yeah, most importantly, if I could just pick one thing to have had during that time, would have been therapy.
I'm listening to Lydia and I'm actually almost laughing.
Why?
Because that was 24 years ago. We are talking about therapy. In this day and era, you are still there advocating for therapy. And there are people who have not even gone in there. So you can imagine how rare that was. How rare. I remember one lady actually who asked me, is it over now? Now, after I had left, is it over now? I said, yeah, it's over. Why don't you try something like therapy? To be honest with you, even if I had the resources, I would not have done that. For fear of going back after therapy. I was down to that level. So probably I could have said, let me first of all cope the way I'm coping. When dust settles, then I can go to therapy for my sake and for my children's sake, but nothing to do with him because I was so done.
But that's an interesting misconception about therapy. What would have made you then? And first of all, when I said I wish we had therapy, I'm assuming we have our minds now. I'm not saying that you bring a therapist then. I know even then the idea of therapy was like, what are you talking about? So it wouldn't have been received that way. But what then would have made you feel like going to therapy is about reconciliation?
That is what I would have done because
even
that woman asked, are you done? I said, I'm done. Why don't you try therapy? So in her statement is like, if I tried therapy or if we did like marriage counseling or something, we can sort things out and then probably be back together. So that is how I understood it. And actually I'm saying that particular time, even if I had the resources or even that counselor waiting there,
you wouldn't have used it. I get it.
Because I would be so fearful of probably looking at the situation and thinking we can do something better. No. The fear in me was just overwhelming.
So I guess I would, if we were these two people, or if my mom was this person, I would have wished that she had therapy then, but not my mom then, if you get my point. Because there's a cultural, there's a mindset about therapy that needs to be like penetrated through for someone to use those resources. It's not just about having the resources.
And also, if I had understood it better, that is also about me and how I'm going to cope, how I'm going to focus on my life and my children. If I had that.
If you knew that
If I knew that then, I could have definitely done that. But it's this concept of, if you did a marriage counseling, you probably can salvage this marriage. That I was so done.
You were done with. You know what's funny is, I guess not funny, but what I'm learning from Lydia right now is, one, having the conversation and making her feel like she's not alone in this, because at that time it's like nobody else is going through that. Because I've had the conversation with my firstborn, and I was just trying to gauge, like, are there any other people in your class? She's like, yeah. Now it's normal. They're like, yeah, so-and-so doesn't have their dad, so-and-so doesn't have their mom, so-and-so has a stepdad and a stepmom, and now we're able to sort of have those conversations in a space that it's something that's normal. But back then, it's so difficult. And then another thing that I want to talk about is coping mechanisms, because for me, my coping mechanism was to sweep things under the rug and we move on and put a strong face and be there for the kids and show up. My sister used to call me a zombie because routine for the children was still done. I would be dying inside, but routine for the kids will still be done, which is also unhealthy. Yeah. Quite unhealthy. So what are some of your coping mechanisms during this time, Lydia? And of course, Mom, during this time as well.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So fair enough, it is... Am I being the interviewee?
Do it.
I can't help it.
Yes.
During that time, but what would you say was the choice though, as far as it's like you don't want to stop to think about your own emotions because you don't kind of have the time or the capacity. So the best thing you can do is keep the structure of the kids on beat just to keep things going. So what would have been the choice, or what do you think you'd have done different if you could go back now?
I think I would have probably felt and released the pain a lot sooner. Exactly. Just given myself enough room to feel, and then released. Cried it out, scream it out, do whatever you need to do. Because for me, it was, we move. You know what I mean? Like, I need to take care of the kids. And also, the kids did make me feel better. Like, they just gave me so much joy and so much. So I used to escape in them. So spend time with them. At some point I did also rebel. Where I was just like, single, then back to mingle, So I did also have my fun. Yeah. But I didn't really deal with the pain. I didn't process what my life had been. I didn't process what I've been through. I didn't process what my kids have been through. So later on is when now I sat down and I was just like, oh my gosh, this has been difficult. This has been difficult for me. This has been difficult for my kids. But it's way later on now when we're talking about therapy, because also for me, therapy wasn't a thing. I used to think, why am I taking my kids for therapy? They're not like, they don't need help. They're fine. Like, I'm doing a pretty okay job. Right. It was not until when we got into court that now, because yes, we did have the custody battles, that it then became a thing of this is necessary. Yeah. Just to see where the kids are at. Yeah.
Okay. So your question is the coping mechanism.
The coping mechanism.
As we were telling you, we didn't have any.
Yeah.
I think looking back
at that time, it was just.
Yeah, I think with myself, because I loved teaching so much.
Yes.
And teaching is not this kind of a job that you're just going to type something. Yeah. It is about performing and getting results. And I loved teaching so much. And I think that is one thing that made me have a reason to wake up. Right. Because there are kids waiting for me, and I don't think I could have taken an off because I'm going through separation. I don't think that was appropriate. I wouldn't. So I had to just carry on with work, and making sure I perform. Right. Because that is what I used to do. And I think that way, I kind of came out of this kind of rat in a better way. But if I didn't, I am just imagining, if I was not a teacher, or if I didn't have a job, and still the same things could have happened. How could I have actually gotten out of that? Then the teachers, the team, I had told them what was happening. They knew what was happening. So sometime when you're just quiet there, someone would come and just bring a conversation that would distract you. I think the teaching environment and the children as well. The kids I was teaching. You are out in the field running, doing stuff. Mrs. Kemani, la la la. There is a way the kids treat you, and you don't have a choice but to smile and laugh. Right. Yeah, I think being at work made things easier for me.
Yeah. So what things, or do you remember that you intentionally did to help us through that?
You guys, I think there is nothing in particular, but I think I drew closer so that you don't feel like you are out. I remember that. And I never used to leave you behind. Even if it's a weekend, because we used to go together to school, they were in the same school, the one I was teaching. So we could go together, come back home together. Even on the weekends, I made sure where I'm going. If it's a function, if it's everything, I was with them. So I drew them closer so they don't feel like they are on the side or left out. And I remember my mom saying that one time, and she was like, do you know, Anna can never ever make you tired of her children because they go together weekdays and even on the weekends when you'd expect her to just shine and just leave, she'll still take her children. So what we used to do is I would take us to my sisters. If I was doing something later, I would make sure they're at my sisters, well looked after. So they feel like they are not left alone at home with Shosho. Yes. So that and visiting.
Do you feel like there was any void that needed to be filled? Because sometimes I look at my kids and I'm just like, I hope they don't feel like there's a space just because of how much, like what mom is saying. I feel like I also overcompensated with like the time that I want to spend with them. I want to drag them everywhere.
I don't think kids feel the void per se, but there's a void. And there's a part, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just kind of how life is. The same way if you weren't in their life, there would be a void. If they were used to their dad and they were used to like the family structure, we had a home. We used to live in a place with like my cousins and things like that. And that was a completely different world. So all of that not being there, for sure, there was a void. However, it's one of those, it's changes with life. It's changes with life. And the most you can do is just do your best to, I guess, nurture that part of them. Because on this side as well, we had cousins, and you just try and make the warmth, as much warmth in this situation as you can. But yes, there's plenty of time I used to think like, where's my dad? Like, what's going on with him? What's going on at home? And also because we left with mom, it was like, why is dad alone? Obviously, I don't know the backstory, but you think about that because even you're wondering what's happening on the other end, but there's no conversation, there's no dialogue around it. So you wonder, and those things happen, but it's more of the stress that you just need to learn how to cope with more than anything can be done about it.
I also, the coping mechanism story, or rather question, there's one thing that is different with our time and with the generation before, even my dad and my mom. I think I've spoken about this in one of the podcasts, which is they sort of hid a lot of things from us and then dealt with things a lot different. So then moving on, like still being able to function normally was a thing that your generation did flawlessly, in my opinion, right? But then now we have cases where mental struggles have become more apparent, have become like a major thing that's happening with our generation. So people fall into depression a lot more, especially in such cases that they're incapable of loving themselves, loving their children, being able to take care of them. At some point, now when I started dealing with things, I thought that I was sort of falling into that state, where it's just like, okay, who am I? Okay, what am I doing? Am I a good enough mom? Should I have left? I'm the one. And then you blame yourself for, the divorce. I'm the one who's given these children this life, now that I made the choices that I made. So what advice would you give somebody, especially because of the fact that, yes, it's easy to sit here and be like, I did this, because now for us, it's in the past, so we can talk on it. But someone who's sitting in this uncomfortable situation where they feel like they're depressed and incapable of functioning because of life, because of divorce, because of trying to figure out what even is happening, basically.
So are you talking about someone who is planning to leave or someone who has
both.
left?
There's both, because even when you're planning to leave, you're not okay. It's a point that you're getting where you're done, you're tired. So I think please speak on both. I think that would be great.
I think I'll start with if you're still in there.
Okay.
Because there are things you're going through and for sure you are suffering. And there is one thing I want to remind people. When you say that you are sticking around for your children, I want to tell you right now, you are not. It's not for your children you're doing this. It's for you. Because of the societal expectations. You are probably thinking if you left, you are, like I said earlier, you'll be judged. I was judged. And I'm not saying that it's easy to be judged.
Right.
No, it is not easy to be judged. But the question is, until when? Until when?
Right.
If you have been given a time limit, I'm waiting for this, it's going to change. I'm only giving him 12 months and I'm sure it's changing. I would go for 12 months, but you don't know until when. So this is about choosing you. Prioritizing you and your children. There is another thing. People think that if they stayed for children, they are doing them a favor. Do you know what? When I separated from my ex-husband and I got to the UK, I remember I saw this program. It used to come on Channel 5 by Trisha Goddard. I remember that. And the heading that day was, should someone stay in an abusive relationship for the sake of the children?
Right.
Do you know what? I sat down because I wanted to know, did I do the proper thing here?
Right.
Did I consider my children? And I sat down and I listened to the conversation, and they said there is no way. Remember, when you went in there, you didn't have a child. You went there on your own, standing.
Yeah.
Now things are not working. Why are you sticking for the kids? And you went there without them. Why are you sticking for the children? That's the question. Because you are an individual. They said there are some children who are brought up by both parents, and they come out worse than when the mother is alone or the dad is alone. Because they're seeing all this conflict every single day. Imagine every single evening, a child hears dad comes in and they're like, you know what? We don't know what's going to happen tonight.
Right.
They are never sure. Lydia, when we were on our own, the only thing is mom is going to work, mom will sleep, we'll go to school. There is no someone is going to come and disorganize us or, or cause chaos. We had our own peace. We might have lacked stuff, probably what other families had. But one thing we knew is we had peace. We would laugh, we would sit down and watch whatever. We would decide today we are not cooking, we're going to get a pizza. But there is no one coming through the door to cause chaos. Imagine this child every single night wondering, am I going to go to sleep without crying? Is my mom going to be hit tonight again?
Yeah.
You see? So those people are trying to explain there could be cases where the parents are together, but the kids are suffering because of what is happening between these two people. So what is better? Would you rather out and have peace with your children or stick with all this kerfuffle happening around you? That's the thing.
Yeah.
Getting to that point is, I feel, a journey for each individual, because until you're done, you're not done. Like, until you get to the point where you're done, you're not done. But what advice would you give, one, from a point of being a child, going through this? What advice would you give? You can even give advice to the moms as a child.
I think it's okay to admit that you're not yet done. I think it's okay to admit that you don't have the courage to leave yet. I think it's okay to admit that the dooming potential of what you think you're losing or the unknown is far more scary to you than the misery you know. It's okay to admit that you are not yet on this other side, because as you said, it's a journey. So, but just as my mom is saying, like the delusion that it's about the kids, it's okay to debunk that, because it's definitely more of a you thing, and it's okay. And the love that you have for your children, you don't want your kids to be away from their dad. I get that. But if they're in a situation where there's abuse happening, no one is winning. Nobody is winning, because I tell you, all of these things my mom went through, I have no idea about them.
Okay.
So then for me, it's like, they're just stories, and that's a better experience than I could tell you. I could hear my dad coming down, Sijui trying to threaten I don't even know. I don't know. I can't speak for that because I don't know it, but I know some of my friends who have been through that experience. And 100% of the time, they always wish that the mom left earlier, just because of the suffering they experienced, watching their mom suffer, even though the dad was a great dad, but watching them watching the mom suffer has its own thing. So advice for anyone who has especially an abusive situation and you're thinking about your kids, I think it's a difficult decision to make, to be weighing out your marriage and your kids. But if you're in a situation where you have safety, you have comfort, you have maybe your family, you have a support system to be able to do this on your own, I would definitely seek that out, assuming you've exhausted all avenues, because marriage is not just something as what we just been, but if you've exhausted the avenues to try and make your marriage work and it feels like it's just you doing it, I thank my mom every day for choosing herself, because she also taught me that I matter and I shouldn't be mistreated, and it's not okay for people to treat me like crap. And so that also it trickles down to how your kids have the ability your kids have to choose themselves too. So I would definitely go on that side, as I'm saying, assuming everything has been exhausted, because marriage is wonderful and things are difficult sometimes and you've got to work through some things. If someone has already left and they have kids, especially daughters, I would say for sure, do take care of yourself, because how you feel about yourself and what's going on with you, the children will feel it. When you're angry, when you're upset, when you're frustrated, your kids feel it the most. It's the, mom, can I... You know, it's like you don't mean to, but who you become when you're bottling down so much frustration, your kids will feel that. So if you have the resources around you to take care of yourself, whether it's like bringing in friends close to you, your family, if you have access to therapy, that would be great. Do what you can to take care of yourself. And then in whatever way you feel right, because those are your children, see how you can support their emotional world. Because in the emotional world, through a separation, it's like the world is burning. The world is burning to them. They don't know what's going on. It's very confusing. They don't have the language to articulate like this is upsetting or I'm angry for some reason. There's a reason why kids start acting up in school, because they don't know what they're going through, but they know they are feeling things. And, you know, so if you can find a way to support them in their emotional journey, that would be so helpful.
Oh gosh, Lyd, I love that you've said that, because now I'm sort of like reflecting on my kids, and I don't know if I can say this or not, but I guess I will. It's there was a period where my daughter refused to talk. My firstborn daughter, whilst I was in this relationship, we got called by a teacher, and the teacher was asking me, does your daughter know how to talk? And I'm like, what are you talking about? My daughter is fluent. But because of what we were going through in that relationship, she just refused to speak. And for me, now, when I sit down and think about it, I'm like, yeah, it was definitely just being in that environment and just putting her through that. But then also having the conversations with my dad later on, the one thing that he always used to say is, don't stay because of your kids. Like that was so clear from the start. Like, just don't do it. So that I back you up on that, mom, completely and 100%.
Do you know what my mom says? Sorry? She says, I left for my kids.
Right.
Like, you know, it's like there's a choice to say, but I left.
I love that.
For my kids, because if an environment is too difficult for me, why is it good enough for my kids?
Do you know, honestly, I just try to imagine. Number one, let me just say something here. That does not mean because I made that decision that easy. I didn't feel for my children. I did. Because I knew they were innocent. He's still their dad. They loved him. I actually remember telling you that. I got to a point of sometimes thinking, I love my dad so much. My dad loves me so much. And I removed my kids from this kind of love. You know? Yes, I got those moments. But one thing I knew I'm not going to do is fall into that. Because I knew when the dust settles, he's going to be coming to see his children. And I knew I'm not going to say no to that. And I've never done that. So I knew it is only this moment when things are so confusing. When the dust settles, he will be coming to see his children. And he did. He was coming to school, lunchtime, bring them all the goodies. They were so happy to see him. And then he would go. So that way, there was a bit of a balance. I'm with them, and their dad would appear. And I had no problem with that. We never fought over that. So I knew at that particular time, I had to wait until the dust settles.
Do you know, my sister is usually like my voice of reason. I call her, it's just like you and I. Like I call her a lot. I call her about everything, actually. And there's a story she told me when we were younger. Don't ever scream. So even till today, if you scare me, like I'll just freeze and jump. because my sister, when we were younger, she told me, Claire, if we're lost in a forest and we're being chased by bad people and we lose each other, and then I find you and I scare you and you scream, then the bad people will find us, you know?
that's
and so
interesting.
from that day on, whenever somebody scares me, like I will not scream.
Yeah.
And so she told me a story of, I don't even know. Actually, I'm going to ask her this, if it's made up or she actually read about
she
it.
older than you?
Yes, she is older than me. I
Yeah.
suspect that it's made up.
Might be.
It might be. So she told me a story of a girl, a lady. This was when I was sort of like in between trying to figure out if I'm going to stay, if I'm not, if I'm done, if I'm not. And she told me, there's this lady that I knew and she was in an abusive relationship, right? And she decided to stay. And so one time when they were in a fight, because of his abusive nature, he picked up the chair and threw it at her. And she ducked. But who did it land on? The child. So she said, with that, if you can, leave now. You know what I mean? Like with that, if you can, leave now. So for me, just to finish up on, don't stay for the kids. I would love some of the lessons that you learned along the way, other than just that. Both you and Ag. For me, I would say it's that. That was like the strongest thing, which is don't stay just for the kids. And also, like you were saying, Mom, you are your own person. And sometimes a lot of those marriages and a lot of those situationships can put you in a position where you end up completely drowning yourself. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
When it comes to divorce, how to deal with it, being yourself. Because even now you're married, you know? Yeah.
What I would want to say is being divorced or separated or being a single mom, that's not the end of your life. It isn't. And if you just focused on the present, don't worry about tomorrow as much. Because what kills us is, I'm a woman here, 32 years old, like Lydia,
Right.
with 2 children.
Right.
And now I don't have a husband. To be honest with you, if you concentrated on that, you're going to run mad.
Yeah.
But if you concentrated on the present, how am I going to come out of this? How is tomorrow going to be with the children? It's going to be easier. But don't go 10 years down the line because that one you're going to get mad. I got to a point sometimes of asking, why did he even destroy my life? Now, I thought it was destroyed.
Right.
To be honest with you, I would kiss him in the mouth right now.
Oh my God, Mom.
Because of how my life turned out to be.
I get
And
what
I don't
you
think
mean.
you'd ever have
Yes.
given me that.
Oh,
You
yes.
see?
Oh,
It is
yes.
true.
Oh,
but
yes.
because you are in the known and don't want to go to the unknown, as we are saying, you are at the familiar situation, however bad it is. So you are comfortable there. Going to the unfamiliar, it is always very, very scary. And I'm going to speak from a counselor's hat now. I'm going to wear that one today. And I'm
Yes.
going to say it is very, very difficult to make a decision heading to a place you don't know. It's difficult. It's doable, but it's very, very difficult and scary. So if you are sat down there thinking, if I leave, what is going to happen with my life? That should not bother you at the moment because you are not the maker of your life. At the moment, just decide that you are out if that is how you feel now. Because if you think about tomorrow, things are going to be very, very difficult for you. Just take the things as they come. And then God will work things for you.
He always does.
Yeah, he always does. Yeah.
What lessons would I say? I guess I would add on to that. I can't imagine what you went through because I don't know if I would be able personally to have gone through. I guess as you're saying, it's doable. I would have had to deal with it because I didn't have a choice. It was going through it. But I can imagine how difficult it was by the context as far as where you were, right? Who you were, who was around you, that the society back then, the information you had back then, or the information you didn't have back then, I can imagine it was so difficult. If somebody messaged me actually about their parents separating, and even as you get older, it's still difficult and it's sad and it's painful. I would say that if there's a world where your parents could give you guys happiness together and they had the capacity to do it together, they would. Most people wouldn't want to be in a separated situation or to have a broken marriage. So there's something that's amiss. And sometimes it's not even like your parents know what's amiss or they know how to help themselves. Right. So if they make the decision to separate, whether it's even a choice they've grown out of love or things aren't working out, that wasn't done to harm you. That was not done to harm you. And your parents are going through their own personal journeys individually, and you've come into that life. I think it was my therapist who told me, how old was Dad when I was born? 32, I think. He's 7 years older than you, right? Six. So he was 31 years old when I was born.
Right.
So he's been on this trajectory, and then I've come in. But you forget there was that other trajectory. So there's a way your parents are individual where you don't exist. And of course, as a child, that's shocking because why am I not the center of their universe? Excuse me, they gave birth to me. But the truth is they're individual people, and there are some journeys and there are some decisions they have to make that, despite the fact that it affects you, it's not to harm you. And the more empathy you have towards that journey and everything that's happening with that, the easier it gets to not taking things so personal. But don't worry, it's taken time and time of therapy to be able to say that I respect my parents' decision in what they decided in their marriage, and it was nothing to do with me. It was painful, and there was many things that hurt me and traumatized me, and I'm working on healing those because that's my responsibility. But I see that it was never to hurt me. So there's a lot of anger I've let go of.
Well done, Lydia, honestly.
There's also another lesson I've learned. My strength. Oh my God. I don't think I could have learned that if I had stayed with Dad.
Yeah.
I don't think so. There is a strength I've discovered about myself that it is out of this world.
Yes.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Mom, you are
Resilience.
something else.
Pushing through everything and anything. Absolutely.
And it is only under that circumstance I could have discovered that, not in any other situation.
And funny enough, Mom, imagine I don't know another version of you.
Yeah.
I just know the strong lion.
So there are so many good things you can discover about yourself.
Yeah. That's
Potentials
true. That's
that
really
probably
true.
otherwise could have been suppressed because of the situation you are in.
That's a great point,
Yes.
Mom. Yeah.
Do you know the number of times I was just telling Lydia the number of times I've held back tears because it's honestly just seeing myself sit there and seeing my child sit there and speaking about these things has been nothing but such a blessing to have both of you on this show today. We haven't really talked enough about it, but I'm sure we will have both of you back at one point or another. And we'll talk about lots more. But then again, this is the Blended Family Podcast, and there's so many challenges that we face. I do know, Mom, that you've gotten married again.
Yes.
And I love the fact that you got married also when your kids were older.
Yeah.
Because there's somebody that I saw talking about the fact that nobody ever talks about blended families when the kids are older, where you're calling your parent and they're busy, happy because now you're a grown child. Like you're a grown up. You can figure it out. But here you are wanting your parent to be happy, but also wanting that mom or that dad that you had, and just wanting that time alone, separate, not because you don't like that person, but just want that time with your parent alone. Nobody talks about that enough. So we'd be more than glad to have you talk about everything to do with blended families.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much for having us. As I said, as soon as I saw what this conversation was about, I was like, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm really passionate about not wanting people to go through things alone that I've been through. I'm here, I've been through it, so why should you go through it alone?
Exactly,
So I know all the confusing feelings that come and things like that. On this point of like blended family when people are older, I feel because by then I had started learning to love and I knew what companionship was.
Right.
As soon as Tim came in the picture,
You were happy.
I was like, go for it. Because I knew there's a void, there's that bit I could never fill.
Right.
My mom loves me and my sister to death, but we couldn't do that thing for her.
Right.
So now that he's here,
But the other thing is interesting when you like or you love each other because I was delaying it for you guys.
Yeah.
Oh.
I knew I could have walked out there and got a man.
Yes, you could have.
I could, and I knew that
you could
for
have.
sure.
Yeah.
And I remember them with their young minds telling me, Mommy, you can start dating. You never go back to that. We know that. Start dating, Mom, before you are old. And do you know what I was saying? Like in a funny way, otherwise you end up with just something with a with a pause. Something, just something with a pause, not a good man, not,
Yeah.
But I told them, it's because of you guys that I'm not doing anything at the moment. I'm waiting for you to grow so that nobody will ever come and do something to you. You will know when someone is telling you something inappropriate. You know when someone is abusing you. It's not when kids are very young. I'm not saying if you have moved on when the kids are young is a bad idea, but that was my choice to do that.
Right.
I was already married. I knew what marriage was all about. Now I have 2 children here. Why am I rushing? You see? So I waited and I said, I'm going to wait because I don't want any of my kids to ever come be abused. We've had those kind of stories.
Oh, yes.
And it's not all the time it happens, but sometimes it does. And you'd never know when it would happen. So I thought I'm going to stay with my girls, just enjoy myself being alone and until they are grown. And let me tell you, think of what you're praying for. Because when Aggie went to university the first year, and that is what I always said, when Aggie is in university, I'll go back to dating. And that's what I did. And that is when Tim came. And I knew now she was grown. And nobody, even if she came to visit because she was away in university, nobody would ever take advantage of her. That's what I thought. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for being on this podcast and for sharing your experience, especially with divorce, from a mom's perspective and from a daughter's perspective. We do hope that this episode has been insightful to some degree or to a whole load of degrees. But at the end of the day, we just want you to know that you're not the only one who's going through this journey and you're not going to be the last. So just hang on in there. Stay tuned to our next episodes to find out what it is that we're going to be talking about when it comes to the blended family unit. And I'm just going to let these lovely ladies sign out for me, please.
I've loved doing this with you, Mom.
Have you? Yeah. Do you know, let me tell you something, guys. My gorgeous fans.
Your gorgeous fans.
There is something very, very strange between me and Lydia. Because Lydia can't wait for me to talk. I can't for her to talk. I can't wait for her to talk. There is a way that Lydia talks and I can be there forever. She has a lot of intelligence, wisdom, so much. I can listen to her forever. And then she says the same. But when she's looking at me, I'm like, is she thinking that I'm thinking like a 57-year-old?
Right.
No, not at all. No.
Yes.
It's so insightful to hear you speak. And thank you for making us do this.
I'm so happy. Honestly, I'm going to cry after this. Because I've been holding it back the whole time. And then just watching the two of you, because it's also healing to be able to just speak. And then you're hearing firsthand on another level what she went through, what you both went through. It's so beautiful. I kept seeing myself with my daughter. I told you this, Lyd, and it's just amazing. Well done, both of you.
Thank you so much, guys, for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And thank you for having us on this podcast. And what you're doing matters because so many of us are in blended families. Surely someone should have a podcast. And we can all talk about it, you know? So it's fantastic.
Thank you so much for having us.
Welcome.
To be honest with you, this is my first
interview.
Interview. I've never been here. And I actually didn't get nervous. Who does?
You're so confident.
No, you did
Mom is the most confident woman on the planet Earth.
Oh my gosh.
So, no, actually, I don't think the nervousness is about what I'm going to say. It's probably saying the wrong thing. Probably what you don't want to hear or what you don't want the audience to hear. That is the point sometimes. What should I say? What should I say? You know, otherwise, I think it was quite relaxed.
It was great.
Thank you so much. And of course, stay tuned. You do know their handles, but they can say it because Mom is popping on Instagram. So
I've
please
become
say
a
it.
pro.
Yes.
And I'm Kessing. You can find me on on Instagram handle. Kessinjoro.
Love it. And Lydia, of course, you can go ahead and say yours.
Lydia KM.
We love them. And please, please, please stay tuned and subscribe, of course, to this channel. We will be bringing a lot more information that will be helpful. That's it for today here on the Blended Family Podcast. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, you guys were so awesome.
I love it so much. I don't think you guys even know it.
So, of course, we don't take it for granted the fact that Lydia and the mom have been able to make it on this show today. And so we just wanted to say thank you for your time. This is for you, Lydia, and this is for you, Mom. These are, of course, courtesy of Dara's Tango Collections.
Invite me more. Oh, and do you know what?
Do you want us to show people?
Yeah, sure, if you'd like.
So
If
first
you'd
of all,
like.
I have been saying that I need to buy more studs. I was actually
Really?
well, these are the only studs I have.
I love
Guys,
others.
Wow.
Come to the Blended Family podcast.
It's a dera.
It's a Dara, yes.
Yeah.
Of
And
course,
mine.
from Tangos. Dara, thank you so much.
I don't think I have a dera actually.
It's so good.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Wow, look at that.
That's a brooch.
Yeah, it's matching my clothes.
It is actually.
And some earrings. Oh, I know. I don't know why I'm gonna hide them because I know
They'll be stolen.
Ali's gonna nick them.
I know.
Thank you so much.
You're
Like,
most
so
welcome.
thoughtful.
No,
Thank
thank
you
you
so
for
much.
making time to be
Yeah.
here. Honestly, it's just been fantastic having both of you.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks.
you
And may God continue to bless you, Lydia, with your wisdom, with everything, with just sharing and helping people, both of you.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's just fantastic.
Yeah, and
Thank
you
you
know,
so
I want to tell you, Claire, you care so much about like the journey with your daughters
Great.
that I know you're doing a great job. You
Thank
care
you.
about it so much.
Thank
I
you.
know it's going to be great.
Okay, let's
All
cut
right,
now.
cut the cameras, guys.
Thank you, Lydia.